Hello you guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today's video is all about episode 4 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Episode 4 is called The White Room. But before we get into it, if you have not watched up to season 3 episode 4 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, then stop. Do not watch this video unless you're down to watch spoilers. We are going to be talking about all the theories and clues from this episode, so if you haven't watched this far, go back. I have videos on this season, season 2 and season 1, and I'll link them up above. So go check those out before you watch this one and come back when you're done. Also, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, then please hit the subscribe button down below. Like, subscribe, comment, all those YouTube-y things. They really help me, and I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this season. We are almost halfway through the season and I am not quite there at that number yet, so hit the subscribe button down below. Share with your friends who also like Only Murders, and yeah, it would mean the world to me. With that all out of the way, let's talk about season 3 episode 4 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, The White Room. So this starts off with Cinda, and she is narrating this episode for us. She is back, she is blonde, and she is sort of podcasting. It seems like she's doing like a wellness podcast, which not really her brand. Obviously, usually she's dealing with darkness and death. We also see that there is this number that is calling Mabel. It calls her a couple of times throughout the show. At first we don't know who it is, later we figure it out. But Mabel's basically looking for a new apartment. She walks into this all white 400 square foot apartment that's like $4,000 a month, and it doesn't include utilities or any water or anything. So typical New York apartment, and it's just seeming like the entire episode is going to be coated in white. She's wearing a white jacket. She's walking into this white room. It's called the White Room. So yeah, we're getting a lot of white in this episode. We then move to Charles's apartment and Joy is moving in. So they, are taking it to the next level. So we're kind of looking at the fish tank, getting a view, 61 fish are not enough, and 63 fish, you're a crazy fish lady, so 62 is the perfect number. And we hear Joy tell Charles that he's a star. She's a very supportive girlfriend. We love that for him. So we're continuing from last episode where we figure out that Kimber is the only cast member who doesn't have her hanky, who hasn't handed it in to Charles. So she was kind of like painted red last episode. She was our big suspect whodunit. And the trio basically thinks that Kimber is the poisoner, mainly because they think it would be easy for her to poison him with her anti-aging serum that she talks about on TikTok. And we also hear that Ben was using the serum, and Mabel just thinks that it would be an easy way for Kimber to poison him by giving him this face serum and having him, put it on. So now we move into the rehearsal space in Oliver's apartment, and Charles has his solo. He's really nervous about it because he says he can't really sing, and he basically has to talk really fast and say all the words really quickly. He is the constable in the show, and there are 3 improbable suspects who are the triplets. And one thing I did want to point out is that I am curious to see how the show and the show Death Rattle Dazzle kind of like mimic and reflect each other. We've already seen some similarities between the two of them, and it's interesting to see like does the number 3 and 3 triplets and 3 possible suspects mean anything to us, and will it come out that there are 3 people who tried to murder Ben, or 3 different murder attempts, or 3 brothers, as people are saying that they think that Ben is a triplet. So these are all things that people are thinking when they're looking at like the triplets, the show, but I am wondering how they're going to reflect each other. Like when we figure out who murdered Ben, are we also going to know how people are dying with these babies in the room? I'm kind of curious, and it gives me like Poppy vibes with Becky Butler, because it's like we never knew what happened to Becky Butler in the first season, and then in the second season, we figured it out. And so now I'm thinking like, are we also gonna be kind of invested in the show and how these babies are killing people, or if these babies are killing people? Back to Charles, he's trying to do his scene. He starts out okay, Then his words get a little jumbled, and then he basically starts just like cursing and he flies off the wall. And we see him go into this metaphorical white room, like a space within his brain, and basically his mind goes blank. And we're told in the episode, and I didn't know this, that this is actually an actor thing, and the meaning of the white room is basically like when you forget your lines or you forget the scene and you like just literally like nothing is up there, nobody is home. And so Charles is stressing out so bad that he's putting himself into this white room, and we are seeing it portrayed in the show in a very creative and clever way. The one thing that this did bring up for me was like, it's kind of like a blackout, except for it's in the quote-unquote white room. So could someone have been in the metaphorical white room and murdered Ben and not even know it, since it's an actor thing? Maybe. So the next thing that happens is they're all trying to console Charles. The other actors are telling him like, yeah, you went to the white room. It's happened to all of us. Everyone's going around like, I went to the white room here and this crazy thing happened. And then Bobo tells his story, and he says that he was in a production of As You Like It, which is another William Shakespeare play, and he went to the white room, forgot his lines or whatever. So the reason that I bring this up is that this is like the third or fourth time that they have mentioned Shakespeare so far this season. And, we've heard the Hamlet quotes a couple of times, but I was like, As You Like It, what is this show about? Is there any sort of reflection within this show and Only Murders? So the basis of the As You Like It show is that there's a lot of brotherly conflict, which is something that we've been seeing a lot within Hamlet. Hamlet's father is King Hamlet and his brother is the one who murders him, and then Hamlet tries to get revenge. Like, you can look up the plot of Hamlet, family drama and brother on brother violence, and this is once again brother on brother violence. So basically the summary for this is that there's this girl, Rosalind, and she's in love with this guy, Orlando. Orlando's brother is Oliver. Interesting that they have the same name. And Oliver hates Orlando, and they basically get into a fight, and Orlando's like, I'm going to challenge the court wrestler to fight me. What's the name of the court wrestler? Charles. So he's like, I'm gonna fight Charles because I hate you so much, Oliver. I don't know where this logic is coming from, but that's what happens. And then when Oliver hears about the fight, he says to Charles, like, please try and hurt Orlando. Like, please try and injure him seriously. So we've got Orlando and Oliver, who are brothers who are beefing, and then Charles, who I think it's just like the name coincidences here are crazy, but who is, the wrestler who Orlando is going to fight. And after this, basically they're like banished to the forest. Orlando runs away. He meets Rosalind. They fall in love, blah, blah, blah. Oliver comes out to the forest intending to murder Orlando, only for Orlando to save Oliver's life. And then they kind of have a little brotherly like kiss makeup, and they decide, let's let bygones be bygones, we'll be besties. And then everyone gets married at the end. So there you have it. I think that the basis of this story being that it's a fight between two brothers, one of which is named Oliver, and then this other character that's named Charles, it just really seems like it's kind of like pulling Only Murders and the play together and like making them relate. So I thought that was really interesting. Is this a sign that there is some brotherly beef going on? That Dickie and Ben were fighting and ended up, acting out revenge upon each other? Or is this a sign that they were fighting but then they actually made up and everything, was okay between them, so it's not Dickie who's the murderer? Like, that's the question. But we can talk more about that theory later. So after Charles has his moment, Howard asks to go call his therapist, and he comes back and of course says, sorry, I lied to you. I was actually talking to Moses Morris from State Farm, hashtag State Farm endorsement, hashtag State Farm is paying for Only Murders. I think that State Farm is kind of a red herring in the series right now, and I do think that they're like sponsoring the show for these like name drops. So I don't think that State Farm has anything to do with anything. Like, what would State Farm have to do with this? I don't know, but I don't think that maybe they were insuring Ben for like a life policy. I don't know. Maybe the murderer is cashing in on Ben's will and death and insurance policy. I don't know, but I don't think that we're taking that direction here. Okay, so there are photos on the wall as they're kind of talking to Charles of each actor and like what role they're playing in the show, and I don't think we definitively knew who each person was playing. So we've got Jonathan as the detective, so he was the understudy and is now stepping up into Ben's role. We've got Ty, who is the father, Loretta, who's the nanny, Charles, who's the constable, Kimber, who I believe is the godmother, and Bobo, who's the narrator, but those two are both extra fuzzy for me and hard to see. So I just thought it was interesting to see which roles everyone is playing in the show, since that wasn't something that was previously mentioned. So continuing on with the show, our fave trio decides that they want to go snooping around at the theater and see if they can find anything, any poison, anything in Kimber's room to implicate her. So they have to convince Howard to let them into the theater because for some reason he's the only one with a key. And after a long diatribe about sweaters, he finally relents and says, yes, I'll let you in. So now we've got an Ollie Mabel moment where Oliver and Mabel are going to the theater together. And we've got Charles with Joy in his apartment trying to figure out how he's going to sing this song to thousands of people on opening night of this musical. And Joy kind of tells him that he should go make an omelet to calm down because he was always really chill and like centered when he was doing that. And he realizes that making omelets is his happy place, and he sings the song without a problem. And so we learn that the triplets in the show's last name was Pickwick, and I looked it up and I didn't see anything crazy, but if you know anything about the name Pickwick, then definitely comment down below. And also there are the lyrics, "Mommy went splat." So we know that she was definitely pushed from the top of the lighthouse, which is again a parallel to how Ben died because he was also pushed down the elevator shaft. So we're once again seeing that parallel between musical and Only Murders in the Building. Like, there's something there, I think. He comes out, he tells Joy, he's like, oh my god, I sang the whole song, like, I'm so proud of myself. Now I just need to make an omelet every time I, sing the song. And Joy's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. A, that's a crutch, and that's an unhealthy coping mechanism. And B, I'm your omelet now, and I'm gonna take care of you just like I did when I dealt with Ben Glenroy. Like, he knew he couldn't mess with you because then he would have to deal with me. So that's definitely a suspicious comment, but they're painting Joy red this episode. They're like, Joy is the killer, Joy is this, Joy is that. So we kind of already knew that this was coming. So Joy is looking very suspicious at this point. Back to Ollie Mabel, they are breaking into Kimber's dressing room, and lo and behold, she is there. So they're kind of like, ah, and she's kind of like, ah. But basically she's there, and it gives them a chance to kind of talk to her a little bit more. But the first thing that we see when they walk into Kimber's dressing room is 3 posters. There is one that is The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, another that is Salome by Oscar Wilde, and then another that is Mrs. Warren's Profession by someone else, not Oscar Wilde. So that's interesting. I mean, I've also read the stories of these different plays and what they meant, and mostly it seemed like they were just about people putting on a facade and pretending to be someone that they're not. But that could be representative of the entire show, not specifically Kimber. But I just think it's interesting that there are all these posters that are like, she's not who she says she is, and like also that are kind of this role of being like the seductress, like the manipulator with sex. I don't know if that's supposed to suggest that Kimber is that role, or if that's, the role that we assumed of her, that she was like using Ben for fame when really, they did not have that kind of relationship. But I just thought that was interesting to point out. And so she's like, yeah, I don't live here. This is like where I do all my business from. We hear Charles come by. They're like, Charles, what are you doing? This is an Ollie Mabel moment. They go out there to talk to him, and when they come back, Mabel's like, I'm gonna girl talk with her and distract Kimber while Oliver and Charles go snoop around Ben's dressing room and see if they can find anything suspicious. So we see Charles trying to break into Ben's dressing room, and at the same time Kimber and Mabel are chatting, and Kimber admits that she wasn't in a relationship, like a romantic relationship with Ben, but that she was trying to get him to endorse her anti-aging oil, and that he had actually agreed and promised to do it, and then backed out kind of at the last minute. And so she says that this is why she didn't feel bad about selling his hanky on eBay, but we can pretty much dismiss her as a suspect. Like I said before, I didn't think they had a romantic relationship. I said that in the past few videos, and I think it was just like too obvious for it to be romantic. It had to be something like a little bit different. But I will say that one question that this brings up is, why would Ben back out of sponsoring the anti-aging oil with Kimber? Like, was there a reason that is relevant to the storyline here? Or was it just like he was kind of a dick and he didn't want to? Kimber also goes on to say that right before Ben went on stage that night, he had come to her upset because he had a red mark on his face, like a red dot or something is what she says. And when Mabel kind of says, okay, can you tell me a little bit more about this? She says, I don't know, but whoever came to help him was really good at their job because you couldn't see it after he came out of his dressing room. So this, once again, is pointing the finger at Joy, like pretty hard, pretty obviously. They're like, Joy. And I just don't think that the killer could be Joy. It's just like what they did with Kimber last episode. It's just too obvious. They're pointing the finger too hard. And at this point, they've totally ruled her out for me. But we do learn this clue that Ben had a red mark on his face before he went on stage. So that is something we will talk about in theories section of this video. So next we hit the big scene where Charles and Oliver call Mabel into Ben's dressing room, and what do they find? His mirror with lipstick written on it that says beep pig, and like with like a little pig drawing. So once again, the lipstick pointing to Joy. We aren't sure that she's the one that covered up the red spot, but she's a talented makeup artist who was around the show at the time and definitely could have been her who did it. And the lipstick, we don't know if that was something that when she was, you know, doing Ben's makeup, she left behind by accident and somebody grabbed and wrote on the mirror with it, or if this is like someone intentionally trying to put the blame on her and suggest that she's the murderer, like is someone trying to frame her. So Mabel pockets the lipstick and she decides, yeah, she's gonna meet with the mystery person. She's still feeling pretty lonely in this episode. You can tell that Charles and Oliver are just not really in it when it comes to the podcast. And it's actually kind of disappointing to watch because I miss the parts of the show where they were like recording the podcast in the closet and listening to Cinda's podcast together. And it was the main thing that they bonded over in the first season. So to not have them participate in it anymore just feels really weird. So I just feel like, I said this last video, but I do feel like they've lost a little bit of the essence of like who the characters were to begin with, who they are. And I know that in a sense they're each kind of achieving their dreams and they're like growing apart. But I miss the trio. I miss them being them. And I wonder if the end of the show, the end of the season is going to have some sort of solution for them being able to stay connected with each other without a homicide. You know, who are we without a homicide? Maybe in this season they'll figure out that they are just like genuinely friends. No homicide needed. Mabel agrees to meet with this mystery person who we find out is Cinda Canning. And Cinda wants to talk to Mabel about the murder and basically says that she wants Mabel to start a Bloody Mabel podcast that I guess she will fund and sponsor. And yeah, she's just trying to persuade Mabel to be her partner. At the same time, we've got Charles doing his performance of the Pickwick triplet song that he has for Oliver, but he can apparently only do this when he is physically pretending to make an omelet. So obviously this does not go well for him, and he ends up back in the White Room again. This time in the White Room we see him like looking at the Statue of Liberty. It's like the orange one, and if you go back, that was actually in the fish tank. So once again, we're kind of reconnecting to this idea of like joy and like moving in with joy and all this stuff. And Oliver actually circles back and says, like, is this more than just stage nerves? Is this about the change of you and Joy moving in together? And, you know, it's sad because Charles says, maybe I'm just meant to be alone. Maybe I've just done this for so long. I'm just meant to be by myself. And I don't think that's true. If anything, I just feel like he's afraid of getting hurt, and so that's why he's having these feelings and these reactions, is like he's afraid of Joy abandoning him the way that Lucy's mom did. Back to Cinda and Mabel. Cinda wants Mabel to produce the Bloody Mabel podcast, like I said, and she's making Mabel a monetary offer like, hey, this could help you stabilize your career. This could, you know, get you like basically a long-term job podcasting, and, you know, help you be able to pay rent in New York City. Back again to Charles. He is back in his apartment with Joy. She is playing with the fish. And he is trying to tell her, I guess, that he doesn't want to live with her, or that maybe she should move out, trying to get a feel of how she's feeling. And she's basically like, it's been 48 hours, Charles, like, just chill. And he is freaking out and goes back into the White Room for a third time, this time with fish like swimming by the windows, and ends up proposing to Joy, which was definitely not what he intended to do. And she says yes. And, you know, then Mabel and Oliver come into the apartment. Mabel's holding the lipstick, and Joy grabs it and says, oh my gosh, you found my lipstick. Thank goodness, I hate an incomplete set. And she sticks it in with the rest of her makeup stuff. And we're like, oh shit. Joy definitely was with Ben the night he died. Whether she was doing his makeup and trying to fix that like red splotch, or she had something to do with his murder, that's clearly what they're suggesting. I think that she was just helping him with his makeup, because the likelihood that Charles is now in a relationship with another murderer is pretty low. But I think that's the whole point. It's like a gag. It's funny. It's like Charles can only fall in love with women who are killers, who are poisoners, I guess. So that is basically the episode. So season 3, episode 4, that's the synopsis of it. And I did point out some clues as I went, so now we get to talk about the fun part, which is the theories. So let's dive in. So first of all, the murderer just can't be Joy and Kimber. It would ruin the season to have the murderers be so obvious, and they do this every season where they grab someone and they kind of like deep dive into their lives, and then it's revealed that they're not the murderer. Like they did it with Howard, and you know, it's not them. It's not them. So my first theory, because we were talking about Ben having a red splotch on his face, we talked about last episode, that video of him with someone, but I still stand by my theory that Ben in episode 3 was yelling at a plate of cookies. We saw how strong his reaction was when they were doing the table read, and so he is yelling at a plate of cookies, you're gonna ruin me, but I want you so bad, like stuff like that. And so he probably ate that plate of cookies. So my theory is that the cookies were never poisoned. Nothing was poisoned. What really happened was that Ben had an allergic reaction after consuming the cookies in his dressing room, whether by accident or on purpose. It would explain the red mark on his face if he started like breaking out in hives. And it would also explain how he wouldn't have traces of poison in his blood or anything. It also makes sense because he could have gone into anaphylactic shock, and it might have taken some time to take effect, so it would have made sense that he could eat the cookies in his dressing room, exit the dressing room, talk to Charles, get on stage, and then collapse. So kind of like going off of this theory, I think that it's possible that Dickie murdered Ben after being so mistreated for so long. Dickie would have known that Ben had an allergy. He would have had the opportunity to, you know, go into his dressing room because he was Ben's assistant. He would have known that Ben can't resist cookies. And Dickie even mentions at the table read that cookies are a weakness. And Ben says, no, they're not a weakness, but maybe Dickie figures out that cookies really can be a weakness if they contain an ingredient that Ben is allergic to. So my theory basically is that Dickie put the cookies in Ben's room. He would have known that he would have eaten them. Ben started having a reaction, but like didn't know what it was, wasn't sure. Maybe that's why he was taking a little bit in his dressing room, went out on stage, talked to Charles, and then collapsed and quote unquote died, but actually didn't die. So this could mean that Dickie murdered Ben twice, that when the allergic reaction didn't take Ben out, he decided to try again and push Ben down the elevator shaft. He would have had the opportunity as, once again, his assistant, and he would have probably been with him when he was walking up to his room. The other theory that I have is that it's two people who are the murderers. So it's possible that Dickie intended to kill Ben with the allergic reaction. It happened. Ben, was fine at the end. And Dickie was like, oh, I'm guilty. I can't do this again. Maybe he was even going to tell Ben the truth. And so someone else, in order to protect Dickie, pushed Ben down the elevator shaft. And I think that that person was Loretta. The reason I think that it's possible that Loretta is the other murderer is because Loretta has been taking on this concept of like being the mother figure, both in the offshoot of like the show that she was booked for, as well as the nanny, and saying that she would protect any child in her charge. And so what if Dickie is her son and that she had to give him up at birth, or maybe he's Ben's half sibling, and so she decided that she was done with Dickie being treated this way. She figured out that he tried to kill Ben and it didn't work. Maybe she knew that Dickie was going to tell Ben the truth, so she said, no, I'm not going to let my son go down for this, and she murdered Ben. And so in order to protect the child in her charge, who would have been Dickie, she decided, no, Ben's got to go. And maybe even to the point where she would go to jail, like she would take the fall as the murderer to protect Dickie. So I would be interested in seeing, as the season goes on, when we, figure out who the murderer is, if there's this kind of like a twist where it's like, oh yeah, like I did it, only to reveal, no, I can't let you do this. And then, Dickie comes out and says, like, I poisoned Ben, or forced him into an allergic reaction. So that's my best guess right now. That's my favorite theory. I really feel like Loretta and Dickie are probable suspects. Another theory I have is that maybe the cookies and the allergic reaction were an accident, and so that part wasn't even like a murder, and the murder only took place after someone in the cast saw the opportunity to get rid of Ben and decided that he really did have to go. So maybe we're gonna have a twist where it's like the first part or the second part wasn't a murder, like one of them was an accident. Because I've also seen a couple people say that they think maybe Ben falling down the elevator shaft was an accident as well. Like maybe it was a Theo situation where he wasn't really pushed, but he like pulls back and then he falls. And I think that would also be interesting, where it's like one is a murder and one is an accident. Those are my theories for the show right now, especially with all the rhetoric around like brothers like fighting with each other, and like brothers like trying to steal the crown from each other. Like maybe Dickie had a really successful career in acting and Ben kind of stole the limelight, and so Dickie decided to take his chance back. If you have any theories, then definitely drop them down below. I love to hear them. Also, feel free to message me on Instagram. It's in the caption if you want to go follow or chat with me. I love talking to you guys about theories. I just love the show. And yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all those YouTube-y things. Share with your friends who also like Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. And I appreciate you all so much. I am desperately trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and to all of those who have subscribed, I love you, you're the best. And to all of those who haven't, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. We have fun all year round here, so it's a good time. But thank you guys, I love you, and I will see you for season 3, episode 5 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Bye guys.
Let's turn the lights out and tell me that you want me to